Okay, now you can start.
Good evening,
Priya,
everyone.
please you introduce Kavita first.
Yes, sir. Yes, I will. Good evening, everyone. This is our second class for questionnaire construction internship. And today we would be covering types of tests used in human resource and with their purposes. And secondly, we would be covering working environment, type of test, and methods of job analysis. So in the previous class, we spoke about what is job analysis, what is workforce planning, and what are the uses and some techniques. And now we will understand the types of tests and where they are used in personal selection and other methods. So Kavita would be starting with types of tests and where they are used. So Kavita is our academic assistant for questionnaire construction internship. So we would be starting with our invocation prayer. Sir, please.
So please close your hands. Oh, Shahana Bhavatu, Shahano Bhunaktu, Shahubir Jankaru Babahai, Tejashina Badhitamustu, Ma Vidvishabhai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, sir,
Now
for
start
the
the class.
invocation prayer. Now, I request Kavita to share her screen. Sir, please make her a host.
Priya, would you be able to share your screen for the PPT?
Okay, yeah, I'll share the screen.
Okay.
So I am making Priya's host, okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now Priya, you are the host.
Wait, sir, I'm sharing. I hope everyone can see the screen.
Yes, yes. Could you put it in the slideshow format?
Okay, I'm trying. Is it full screen now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Kavita, please begin.
Yeah, thank you. So before we start, I just wanted to know who all do we have along with us. Is that Yashwati?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so even though our topic is types of psychometric test, I felt that we need to cover the application of psychometric test in organizational settings before we begin with the types of psychometric test, because the type of the psychometric test that we choose depends on the application purpose to begin with. Priya, can we move on to the next slide?
Yes.
So here in this diagram, you can see an overview of the application of psychometric test in organizational setting. So first is the recruitment, second training and development, in which for identification of training need, psychometric tests are used, as well as to evaluate the effectiveness of the training program. The second is organizational planning, in which for succession planning, psychometric tests are used, as well as to identify candidates with high potential. The next is for performance evaluation as well as employee engagement. Next slide, please. So to begin with, what is cultural fitment? So in identifying whether a candidate fits well into a company's culture, these psychometrics tests can be used. So for example, if the company's culture is hierarchical in nature, then does the candidate have good leadership or team player skills? If yes, then he fits well into the company's culture. So here, the main critical component is in personifying the ideal employee in terms of the organizational or job role. So this can immensely reduce the employee attrition. The second use is the inherent traits. The psychometric test can be used to get an inside view of the candidate's fitment and how they might or may not interact, engage, or improve the workplace. The next is the cost and the time efficient. So the use of psychometric tests right from the beginning of the application process ensures that the time to hire decreases as well as it reduces the cost of hire. The next is the recruitment process that we had seen in the diagram. So what is recruitment process? It is a process of identifying and screening a potential candidate for a job position. So interviews in themselves do not measure the ability. So the use of psychometric tests provides with a benchmark, that is a comparative view of the results against other applicants and previous hires which are currently thriving in an organizational setting. Next slide, please. So as candidates interact with the test, they undergo through the same process without bias if a test is standardized. So it is a robust alternative to interviews which are heavily relied on the interviewer's judgment perception. The next one, learning and development. So the use of psychometric test is to gauge learning agility, motivation to learn, openness to learn, preference for a learning mode. All of this can be actually assessed using the psychometric test and can be used to design better development plans for individuals. The next is organizational planning. So here the use of psychometric test is to identify behavioral traits which are indicative of leadership potential, which positively impacts performance management, ensuring strategic positions remain occupied with the competent performance. So if we statistically see, external recruitment and training is more expensive than internal promotions. So by choosing candidates who have certain skills and abilities already, then it will reduce the need for such external additional training. The next is performance evaluation. So the traditional methods of performance evaluation carry a high risk of individual bias as well as favoritism. Psychometric tests also makes the evaluation process more objective and data-backed. They are not comprehensive and also undermines the effectiveness of people's performance, the traditional method. But here, with the help of psychometric tests, which is objective, reliable, and valid, the risk of individual bias and favoritism reduces a lot. Similarly, if you see for employee engagement, psychometric tests can measure the level of dedication that an employee feels towards the job, which will then help them develop various ideal work environment and resources which are needed by an employee to elicit best performance. Next slide. So now that we have seen the various application of psychometric tests in an organizational setting, we can look into the general types of tests that are used accordingly. So the first one is the aptitude test. So as you know, aptitude test measures a person's ability or knowledge level in a certain fields. These tests also provide insight into a candidate's general level of intelligence and ability. The format of aptitude test which is being administered may vary depending on the test. or the field that we are measuring. The second is the verbal reasoning. It measures the subject ability to comprehend verbal descriptions or arguments in order to understand their meaning and draw conclusion. So now this usually involves reading a passage and then answering a series of questions with true, false, or cannot say. The next type of test is numerical reasoning. It measures the subject's ability to analyze and comprehend numerical data and perform calculation. Topics in these tests include ratios, percentages, trends, and currency conversions. And the test format is usually multiple choice. The next test is inductive or abstract reasoning. It measures the ability to work with unfamiliar information and to come up with creative solutions to problems. So here the aim is to discover how well a subject can think analytically and conceptually. And the test format involves looking at a sequence of symbols and determining how to complete the sequence. The next type of questionnaire, can we move on to the next slide? Is the personality questionnaire. A questionnaire which is designed to understand how the subject prefers to work and how well they will fit within a particular work environment. The test format usually includes a series of statements that ask the subject to agree or disagree, as well as to choose which statement most or least describe the subject. The next one is motivation questionnaire. Now, this is designed to understand what motivates a subject in order to improve the working condition and increase the employee satisfaction and retention. The format usually includes a series of statements and asks the subject to rate whether each situation would increase or decrease their motivation. The second last, is the accuracy or checking test. Here, it measures the subject's ability to find error within a group of information as quickly and as accurately as they can. The format usually includes a series of numbers where the subject has to quickly ascertain whether they are the same or different. This test has a strict time limit. It is usually speed test, and the goal being for the subject is to answer as many questions correctly before the time runs out. The last is the knowledge test. It measures the subject's proficiency in a certain field or area, such as the engineering or the information technology. It normally includes multiple choice format, but the test format again may vary depending on the field being tested. And it may include questions regarding logical reasoning, numerical reasoning, and other types of questions. So here is a comprehensive view of all the general types of tests that are often used in an organizational setting. That's all for the types of tests, Priya.
Hello, Kavita.
Yes, sir.
I have followed your lecture. This is nice. One thing I like to add, that is, if possible, in later, you can talk about the advantage and the disadvantage.
Sure, sir.
Then the students may have the good idea. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another one, that is, if possible, you can add some application so that they can get this knowledge.
Yes, sir. I have a case history, in a case study in my hand, and I was thinking after the lecture we can share it so that they'll get a view.
Yes, that's good. So now you ask your student.
Yes, sir. Yashwati,
Whether she has followed it or not.
Yes, ma'am.
do you have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Priya, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay, sir, do you have anything more to add into what Kavita had
I have already told Kavita that is if possible, later on discuss about the advantage and the disadvantage of, that
yes,
is the
sir.
style.
Yes,
Another one is the application.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's all.
Okay. Okay. So in the last class we had discussed job analysis and why it is an important and integral part of having the right fit of candidates, and the candidates not just they are right fit but also they help us enhance the performance of the company, but also they are mentally and emotionally stable, so that none of not any part of the selection process and while working everyone is balanced, so everyone is satisfied, the job satisfaction levels are right, the productivity levels are right, the communication between different hierarchies of people is right, so a balance of. So I want to briefly talk about the selection process. I won't be sharing any PPT because the material, it is a part of a book and it would be shared in the Google Classroom. So you have to go through it because it's very briefly I'm going to share. So the first step of selection process is to develop job analysis. And as we had studied in the previous class, that job analysis help us to find out specific skills required for the job, and also if the person's qualification is necessary and applicable for the job. Once these abilities are specified, the HR manager finds some methods to identify these characteristics. Suppose I am recruiting a person who mentions in his qualifications that I know. Okay, I should start the video. One second, please. Okay, am I visible? Okay. So if I am mentioning in my profile that my criteria involves, my qualification involves that I am proficient in MS Excel or MS Word. But what is a method to testify that if I am a person who knows the things of MS Excel or MS PowerPoint or other packages of MS Office? So there are certain methods to find out. So the HR manager must find methods to identify the characteristics. If the skill requirements are complex or more demanding, if the person only knows to go around with a few techniques, or some higher demands are required from the client, and the second, and that way each applicant is evaluated on their background of skills and then on the background of their applicability of skills. So you can see the process includes taking information in the form of CV and then evaluating it, and then in certain rounds it is find out the application based task is given to the candidates to solve a problem, to solve a certain degree of problems of various degrees, from being very simple to very difficult, to find out where that person lies on the scale, if the whatever the person is claiming to know, the candidate knows it or not. So every applicant uh, is evaluated on the basis of certain standards and aptitude based on the job and the analysis of the worker as a person. And after that round of the aptitude round, certain interview questions are asked with the help of psychological test, which can be administered, and on the basis of that cutoff scores are established. So Yashwati, why do you think psychological tests are required in certain conditions? Kavita, just explained you in certain settings where psychometric assessment can be used. Why do you think people are putting a lot more emphasis on the use of psychological scales in the selection process? Any
Yes,
inputs
ma'am.
from you?
Ma'am, psychological test saves times and not very expensive, easier to apply.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Those are the properties of psychological tests you just mentioned. But why? Why are
Bias
they
and
trying?
bias free also.
Right, right. So
More objectively, we can find the right candidate.
absolutely, objectively, we can find out the right candidate and the personality fit of the candidate. So, okay, but Yashwati, do you think there are also chances where the clients or the candidates can fake certain information which cannot be revealed just by aptitude or just by interview, where there is a lot of chances of social desirability? What kind of test do you think could be used in such situation?
Ma'am, projective tests, I think.
Projective test. Do you know any projective test which could be used?
Ma'am, in organization settings, I don't know, but in clinical, I heard about TAT.
Okay, TAT is a projective test.
In organization, I think we can use sentence completion test.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because TAT, Rorschach can require a lot of time to administer.
Yes.
But SCT is used in selection process, not just in industrial setup, but also in the army and SSB, where they want to find out the unconscious and some places where the person can fake certain personality characteristics. So that was a nice answer, Yashruti. So the part of recruitment decisions involved choosing candidates which are right fit for the job, but also possesses certain personality characteristics. And now the interviews are including personality scale, so that any form of social desirability and faking and choosing a candidate which can not come up as worthwhile, it can be eliminated. So the what are some selection techniques which are used? I'm going to talk about it. So in order to conclude fair employment practices, the job analysis is given to all the selection processes, and along with that, all the techniques are followed. So I would be covering a few techniques which are done in the techniques to do job analysis. Okay. So the first is interview. So whenever a person is using, the company is using interview, so the subject matter experts they have a set of some questions which they can ask, which can also be structured or unstructured. And on the basis of those questions, they are carefully planned, and they want through interviews, they want to elicit maximum information about the job and what the person knows about the job, his or her previous experiences, and certain conditions where the unique conditions where the person has worked on. Some hypothetical questions can also be given where the person can identify and show their skills. Okay, so interview is subjective, very subjective, and it is an interacting process where a panel of people ask question to the interviewee. So it can include using of certain questionnaire. It can be structured and non-structured. So Yashwati, can you tell me a difference between interviews which are structured and non-structured, unstructured?
Yes, ma'am. Structured interview are already interviewer have already framed questions. They
Right.
are close-ended and Unstructured, they have open-ended question answer session.
Is it always the same way? Do
No,
you
ma'am.
think all unstructured interviews are open-ended or close-ended?
They can be semi-structured also.
Okay.
Sometimes they have
Semi-structured.
framed questions, and later they can be converted in unstructured.
Okay.
They can frame their own questions
Right,
according to
right.
the situations.
So unstructured interviews are where it follows a pattern of questions eliciting from questions eliciting from the interviewee's responses. So they are not strictly following a pattern or a sequence of questions, but the mode of asking questions is from the responses received from the interviewee to elicit more and more questions. Okay, so whereas structured interviews are where every question is following a sequence which is pre-decided, and even if the panel is asking questions, all the questions are going to be in sequence because they want to keep the pattern same for all the candidates. So in different situations, different techniques of questions are asked. In some places where more interaction is, they're aiming for more interaction, they keep it unstructured. And if they want to have a certain questions to be addressed, but want to keep it interactive as well, so they keep it semi-structured, where they are following a broad structure of questions, but also letting that not strictly following that. So this is how structured and unstructured question interviews are being. Similarly, unstructured and structured questionnaire, where unstructured questionnaire means which is open-ended questionnaire, where the subject matter experts decide the component of the job in their own words. Whereas the structured questionnaire, where people are provided a description of the task, procedures, and working condition. So can you give me an example of structured and unstructured questionnaire?
Ma'am, clinical interviews are unstructured, and organizational interviews are structured.
Right, but in context of personnel selection, do you think clinical interviews, the techniques of clinical interviews are exactly used?
No, ma'am.
So what do you think? How do they proceed with some such questionnaires?
Ma'am,
Do you
actually,
think they make on their own, on
yes,
the
ma'am.
basis of their understanding?
On the basis of their observation and the understanding and their responses.
Absolutely. If they are looking for a certain characteristics, they make their own questionnaire and they use it over and over again. But in terms of structured questionnaire, the questionnaires are often standardized, have a proper procedure of administration, of scoring and interpretation, such as position analysis questionnaire. It has 194 job elements and it has 6 categories regarding different processes, mental processes, work output, relationship management with other person, job related and other job related activities. And similarly, many job analysis questionnaires are being used. But when we talk about unstructured questionnaire, suppose I want to assess a person's creativity. So I will ask a set of questions that would loosely connect with the concept of creativity. They would not be broadly based on a test, but the person's or the company's understanding of creativity in their own organization. Suppose creativity in an art company would look different as compared to creativity in an stock market. So those two different contexts can have their own definitions of creativity. So in an art organization, creativity would include bringing more and more interesting prompts and interesting methods of creating art forms, whereas in a stock market company it would include what are the certain techniques by which we can sell the stocks and include more and more people. How can we make the stock market process more interesting so that more and more people join that. So similarly, there are different ways of assessing creativity. In a stock market, if an unstructured interview was there, the people would ask, what would it look like if you have to sell the mutual funds to different people without making it a very tedious process, how to make it very interesting process to approach. Whereas in an art company, they would ask, if a person gives you a brief to create this and this or this kind of painting, what are the mediums are you going to use, and in what methods are you going to meet the demands of the client. So the same concept of creativity looks absolutely different in different contexts. The third technique is direct observation. So the job, when we are talking about direct observation, the job analyst observe the representative sample of workers at various time during the workday. Okay, and the entire process helps the person to record if there are any other factors such as fatigue and the influence of performance. That way, the analyst is able to identify unnoticeable, tries to remain noticeable, so that the worker's performance is not influenced by his or her presence. The observation can also be done through electronic monitoring. So if you want to do direct observation, you can do observation through CCTV cameras or being present there unnoticed as a part of the group. That way, you want to see the person in their best self without any faking or any kind of being pretentious. So that way, the chances of other factors causing any difference in the person's behavior can be eliminated. Okay. So these are few techniques through which job analysis is done, and there are few more techniques which are used in the exactly on the spot, which are also known as systematic activity logs. So where activity log is there, the workers and the supervisors record details of the activities, and which provides information that is otherwise not obtainable. Suppose I am working on a ship, I have made a blunder, but other than the workers and the supervisors, nobody knows about it. But if there is a record which is being maintained about what is coming, what is happening, who and who were there when this was happened. So when the people are not eliciting any details, they are not sharing any details, we have to go back to the job, the place of the location, and check the records. And this is how we find out a certain additional information about the job, which is generally we cannot identify. The next and the last is critical incident. Critical incidents is a technique which is on the spot. It helps us identify the unique behavior which could lead to successful job performance. Behaviors which help us distinguish between the good workers from poor workers. Third, behavior which lead to desirable and undesirable consequences, and areas where retraining might be needed. So critical incidents is widely used in places where training and lot of processes are involved. So that way, a supervisor goes through all the steps and tries to know what exactly happened is happening at that spot, to identify the things and the processes, the interaction between everything in between the process. So that way, these four methods are widely used in the job analysis process. Some processes are done while interacting between the supervisor and the candidate. And in some ways, job analysis is done indirectly, which is by observing through camera, indirect observation, or being a person at a critical incident. So these are the few ways by which the job analyst elicits information about the job and the candidate and the other factors which might intervene between the work and the productivity. So that way, these four, I conclude with the four techniques. Okay, so do you have anything more to add?
Yes, Priya, please continue.
Yes, sir. My part here is done. Do you want to add anything?
You asked Jashati what you have discussed, whether she has understood or not. You asked some quiz, you asked some question.
Yashati, do you have any questions?
Ma'am, can you give the example of critical incidents?
Yeah, I want to give an example of critical incident
Yes.
because I was a part of certain thing last year. Okay, so the critical incident method is where something has happened at the spot and you are trying to find out what happened. So critical incident would look like something which happened, a criminal instance which might have happened at an incident. Incident means a point where it had happened, and critical means it something critical and which has happened and at a particular stop. So it could be anything, and analyzing the entire thing involves going through all the process and how each thing interacts with each other. So I want to share one of my experience with critical incident as a psychologist, where at a ship, some forgery of documents was done and someone at the ship mailed a person anonymously that there are some people are getting involved in a forgery of documents, that certain kind of oils are coming and they are selling, the buying and selling of certain kinds of oil is being done, which is considered illegal in shipping industry. That the oils are a very important part of the shipping industry, where buying and selling of the same thing is prohibited, and if someone finds out, that person can be jailed. That means it is clearly a criminal activity. So there were certain hierarchy of people were involved in that, and nobody revealed anything. There was some third person who anonymously messaged the company through an anonymous email that such and such activity is going on, and because I don't think it is right, I have to anonymously share this with you. The company communicated with the people working on the ship that we have received this and this information, so we have to carry out we have to carry out some series of interview and investigation to know if the claim is valid or not, or if it is valid, who all people are involved in this activity. because if certain thing is being carried out, the name of the company gets spoiled in the market. So this was the whole scenario. So I was a part of the psychological investigation where I was supposed to, since this is criminal activity, no one would openly come up and say that I was a part of this and I was doing this. No, nobody would claim this. So other than the company was taking interview and checking the records and everything, I as a psychologist took certain psychological semi-projective techniques to identify what kind of behavior was manifested by each of the members and who has the tendency to get into this kind of trouble, and what kind of relationship do all of these share where there are certain clashes between people, or who are the group of chunk of people who might get into this activity. So after thorough observations, interviews, recreating the situation, matching details with each other, and multiple stages of semi-projective interviews, it was found out that a group of people, not exactly, but 2 to 3 people were involved in such and such incident, and which was later identified with the help of the records that yes, there was a change in the level of oils, which it was maintained, it was checked, cross-checked with the previous logs. So it all that happened at an incident, and critical incident is meaning you are trying to see what happened there, what is happening there, what are the factors which are contributing in there, such as the relationship between the client, how if people are satisfied or not with the work, and what kind of relationship do they share with the senior if they face any difficulty, how the senior is responding, and how the different hierarchies are communicating with each other. So there are such things you cannot identify with the help of a direct interview or aptitude. There are such things, such dynamics which are only revealed at a particular incident. So that is why, and you have to critically evaluate every step. That is why it is written critical incident. That means you have to critically evaluate, cross check every step, and generally most of the time it is done in factories at the spot where the workers are carrying out their work. So this is why critical incident has been a method to identify the clear relationship between the work and the dynamics, and how exactly the things are being carried out, which sometimes may not be revealed in a conditions or interviews, because that way at that place the candidates are at their best behavior. So I think I hope my description might have helped you understanding critical incidents.
Yes, ma'am, I got it.
So is there any positive critical incident behavior or the risk-taking critical incident behavior? Is there any classification?
Sir, I'll have to elaborate more on that, because then it would be very specific to certain industries. But the positive critical incident behavior would be to contribute in the analysis process, and the risk-taking behavior would be to not follow the right process, because every task has a process, and if that is followed and a proper communication is maintained with the hierarchy of your boss and the boss's boss and the people below you, then all the processes are maintained and checked at every time. If anyone fails to maintain the process, and which can cause lags in the process, which can later show up in any point of investigation.
Correct. So what we have understood that critical incident appraisal focuses on the essential behaviors that determine whether a task is done well or poorly.
Yes, sir.
Documentation in this case involves briefly summarizing the situations that already discussed by Priya that demonstrate their successful or unsuccessful behavior and outcome. So two things are there. One is the successful outcome, another one is the unsuccessful outcome.
Ma'am, during such critical incidents processing, we can also find out some extra positive sides of people, employees.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to reiterate the same example. There were people, so I found out that there are people who were absolutely doing the job on time. They were following the process, and due to their help, we were able to find out the people who were indulging in this criminal activity. So there are certain traits, personality traits and behavior traits of person which we are not able to identify because those are minute characteristics and traits which when come together become a highlight of one's personality. And sometimes the personality traits are not very much, we cannot identify much them in interviews, but they're generally manifested through work. So I could see that the people who are at the top, the chief level, they were carrying out their tasks absolutely process by process. So at any point where they were interrogated and were asked for the questions about the discrepancy in the records, he was able to answer that. So that is a advantage of a critical incident, that people who are working very professionally, they are able to they are able to defend themselves. But in workplace it is used as a critic based on direct observation, and the major strength of this technique is to the performance evaluation, which are based on actual performance and which are first hand by the employee's manager. So there are some techniques which can provide us not the very actual performance of the person, but if you actually go there and see how it is working, how the people are working, if they are coordinated or not. Critical incident is direct observation. So I told you this example of shipping industry, but if we can apply this method everywhere. Suppose I am a psychologist. I was selected on the basis of my qualification, and I also displayed my skills in aptitude test and in interview as well. But if the recruiter somehow drops in and sees how am I handling a crowd of 50 people who is hovering around me, and at that point of time, if my patience, if my skills are being impacted, and how am I able to deal with all that workload? So that person is directly observing me in the setting and evaluating my performance in different it is in absolutely challenging situation. So that is a good way of observation, that that person is able to make the direct evaluation of my performance, that yes, I possess the qualification, I possess the skills, but how am I displaying those skills in different situations? And if I may require any assistance, how am I able to do that? Am I shouting at the clients, or am I able to peacefully manage the crowd and manage the challenging situation or not? So these situations display absolutely a different part of that person's personality, which may or may not be able to identify through other methods of job analysis.
Okay, for your information, there is one approach, that is the behavior anchored rating scale. Behaviorally anchored rating scale, or BARS. Usually we follow the BARS for understanding the critical incident and graphic rating method. Okay. So in near future, you will learn it. The critical incident behavior, which behavior is critical incident? Now, one example is that answers phone promptly and cautiously. So that is the critical incident. Okay. Then you have to divide this particular behavior into two categories. In case of the BARS, that is answers phone within 3 rings. Ashwati, clear?
Yes, sir.
And greets caller with hello. So this is the BARS technique. So when you find the critical incident behavior, then you have to analyze the behavior into these two ways. That is answers phone within 3 rings, very specific. And greets caller with hello. Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything to be discussed, Priya?
Iti has joined.
Yes, ma'am.
So Yashwati, whatever you have learned, you tell it. You briefly.
We have discussed about types of organizational tests we can use.
Okay.
Yeah, these are aptitude tests, verbal reasoning, motivation jacking test, and numerical tests.
Okay.
After that, we have discussed techniques of job analysis. These are interview, direct observation type. We have also discussed in detail interviews, types of interviews with example, performance evaluation, in detail.
Okay. Okay. So that's it.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be going through the presentation once we'll have this. Sir and ma'am, I won't be able to reply much once I'll be traveling back home. So for a while, but I'm attentive in the class.
Okay. So Iti, we have covered the two topics, which are the types of psychometric tests which are used in organizational settings, and the second, methods of job analysis. So these are two things which are being covered, and on the basis of that, we would be going to our next lecture, which is a totally practical based lecture. But before we proceed into our practical based lecture, I want you all to prepare a report, 1,000 words of the things which we have discussed in the last two lectures. It should not be over 1,000, but at least 750 to 1,000 words. And you have to use your own examples. That is what is expected from you.
Okay.
The assignment would be posted on Google Classroom, and there is a way of posting your assignment. Okay, you have to post an assignment. Either you can handwrite, you can post your handwritten assignment, or you can share your document anyway, whichever way feels suitable to you. You have to upload your assignment, and that is before our next class. And today or tomorrow we would be sharing a quiz on the basis of our last two classes. It would be a quiz of 10 questions. You have to attempt it after going through both of the classes, then it would be best, because that would ensure that you have thoroughly gone through all the topics and all the things which were shared and was discussed with the help of examples. So the quiz would be on the basis of whatever interactions are we having, whatever things are we sharing with each other, and whatever the PPT is being shared. So the quiz would be made out of the resource material which is being shared, the PPT which has been discussed, and the kind of examples and interactions which we have been having. So you have to attempt that quiz by tomorrow, and you have to submit an assignment by next week. For that, you have to go through both of the lectures. So both of the things would be posted on Google Classroom along with the resource material. And next week, we would be having all the steps of literature review, and we would be parallelly doing that. And I request all the participants to join from their laptop, because after we have discussed the steps of literature review, you would be expected to make one entry of literature review on the basis of data given to you, so that you know how to write literature review, in a table. So you have to do one example here by presenting your screen. For that, you would require your, it would be helpful if you join it through your laptops. Will that be okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I did not hear.
Yes, ma'am, that will be okay.
Okay. Yashwati, will that be okay for you too?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And post that exercise, you would be given an assignment to complete literature review on certain variables. So that would be that I'm giving you an overview of your upcoming lecture, so that all of you are prepared. Okay. Kavita sir, do we have anything more to share?
No, I think we covered it for today, Priya.
Okay, I think we have covered our topics in before time. So Iti, the YouTube recording would be shared. I request you to go through it along with the resource material and the PPT, which would be shared in the Google Classroom. And we would share the quiz by tomorrow morning, and everyone is supposed to complete the quiz by tomorrow, end of the day, which is 12th May. So that this evaluation, the evaluation for first two classes and the unit 1 is done. And similarly, for every after every unit we complete, we would be having a quiz, so that your performance is also assessed. this is how we would be assessing your, this is how your performance would be evaluated. Okay, so
All right, Sam.
Iti, if you face any difficulty after going through the lecture, if you have any questions, please drop it in the
In
WhatsApp.
the group or personally, will that be okay?
I can't hear you, Iti.
Actually, there's so much noise. Is this
You're not audible. Your voice is a little muddled up.
audible now?
No. Okay, so Iti, if you have anything to share, you do share in the WhatsApp group. And okay, on that note, please switch on your cameras. We would be taking a picture for attendance. And post that, we would do our closing prayer. Please switch on your cameras. Kavita, sir. Okay, sir, are you there? Oh, it is is commuting. Okay, that's why there was lots of noise. Okay, sir, we can't hear you. Okay, sir, I'm taking a picture. 3, 2, 1, please smile. Thank you, everyone. So now we will have a closing prayer.
Please close your hands. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purno Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you so much, sir. And as sir has requested, you all should know the prayer and the meaning of the prayer. So from the next lecture onwards, I would be displaying the prayer and the meaning of the prayer, so that by end of our 3 months curriculum, you know at least one of it. Thank you so much for being there for the lecture. Have a nice evening. Thank you so
So what will be the next class?
much. The next class would be on Saturday.
Saturday. Okay.
Yes, sir.